Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? Hope we're all doing very, very well. Now, in the previous video, I was showcasing fantastic artwork done by the great Gary Kester of great film composers and conductors, John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith. So I used it as an opportunity to play a lot of their music and had great fun. Now, I did also say in that video that, the next video is also going to be musically flavoured. And it's going to be about Wojciech Kilar's score for Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Ford Coppola from 1992. Now, regular viewers will know that I've actually said quite a few times in the last 2 weeks or so, I've got a video coming up about the score to Bram Stoker's Dracula. Well, finally, it's here. I've amassed a few of these fanged friends of mine, to enjoy what will ensue. So, Bram Stoker's Dracula, I have talked about it a lot in the past, and I'm a massive fan of it. I think it's opulent, it's sensual, it's gothic, it's brooding, it's dark, it's darkly romantic. There's a fair bit of blood in it, and there's some action and thrills and spills, but it's a great cinematic experience in that Coppola used a lot of in-camera effects, miniature work, forward and back projection, and lots of speeded up camera work and zoom shots, and just lots of old school practical effects from the George Méliès era of filmmaking. And it was a great experience. And of course the score, Wojciech Kilar's score. He was Polish. It took me about 20 years to work out how to pronounce his first name. Wojciech. It's Wojciech Kilar. He also did for Roman Polanski, The Ninth Gate, which is a wonderful score to a really bad movie. But this is a great score to a great movie. I do struggle to call it an out-and-out full-blooded horror movie, because it isn't. It's a gothic brooding romance, but it's great, even though it's got Keanu Reeves with the most appalling upper class English accent that you've ever heard. Bloody wolves chasing me through some blue inferno. It's god awful. And Winona Ryder as Mina Harker, and yet I can't take them out of the movie. They don't ruin it for me. They just add a flavour of, oh Christ, here we go, Dick Van Dyke, but Dick Van Bite. But no, I love the movie. Now, me and Mrs. Kilt-Man saw it on day one of its UK release, and it was a bizarre circumstance as well, because we were living in Liverpool at the time, since 1992, and my mum, Big Kilt Mama, who was a star of stage and screen, and had done some gothic sort of parlour room dramas and Agatha Christie style things. Well, a lot of genuine Agatha Christie plays on stage. She did not like Dracula, and I remember when I was only a kid, a wee whippersnapper, and I bought, I'd be 10 years old, because I bought the edition of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel, which came out to coincide with John Badham's 1979 version of Dracula, with Frank Langella playing the Count. And so it's got 8 pages of colour pictures. I would show you it, but it's actually propping up that mask over there. I've actually used it to prop it up. I just realised, damn it. And when I brought that into the house, the older Kilt mansion, and my mum saw it, she went, "Get that book away from me, get that book away." Well, of course, she didn't say, "You can't have that book." She said, "Get that book away." Oh, it scares me, Mum. Wow. And I read Dracula and then reread it. I say read it and reread it. I struggled to read through Dracula. And I always have struggled to read Dracula. I actually don't find it that exciting or engrossing. Whoops, I've said it there. Stoker's writing, it's termed as a Gothic horror. Obviously, it's one of the kings of Gothic horror, and yet it really isn't, because he was very forward thinking. He was using a lot of modern science and modern technology was incorporated into that story. And it's also quite a progressive story in terms of its ladies, in terms of its travel, and its sort of role reversal. And it was quite a progenitor for a lot of what we now term as, modern sort of thrillers and horrors and chillers. But I didn't find it scary. As always with Dracula, it's the opening which is the best. Harker arriving at Castle Dracula, the Borgo Pass and all of that. When they get to England, Whitby, London, it's just, I don't know. I love Dracula. I love Hammer's Dracula. I love the Bela Lugosi Dracula. But they're very different beasts from what Stoker wrote. And Coppola, with screenwritten by James V. Hart, they steered a lot closer to what Stoker wrote. However, the whole reincarnation thing of Mina, and there's a lot that they brought to the pot, the bubbling bloody cauldron, which wasn't what Stoker wrote. But they do adhere to many of the set pieces and elements, and the characters especially. So, it's the closest that we've got, to be honest. But anyway, so my mum didn't like it. Keep that book away from me. And I did. I devoured it and I thought, what's your problem? In fact, I got bored halfway through. And I also didn't like the memoirs, the letters, the journals, the diaries. I understand it now, having written books myself and having studied literature, that I understand that way of creating different perspectives, which he does. Stoker does create different perspectives on characters and how the women folk look at the men folk, and it's actually quite more progressive than you think from a Gothic novel from that time period, but with the whole class and caste system. But I just didn't like that it's broken up and all that. I appreciate it now, but I didn't then. And I thought the films are way better than this. I wanted gore and violence and death and zombies and undead. Not so much zombies, okay. But and he didn't really get any of that. He got bits of it, but it just wasn't that enthralling. But of course, I've learned over the decades to appreciate Stoker's novel a lot more now, and I do enjoy it. I think it's a lot pulpier than people give it. People tend to aggrandize Dracula because it is up there. It's statuesque. It's on a pedestal along with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, of course, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and all the original classics, and Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. It's really up there. Of course it is. And so influential. But I still think it's overrated. It's bled into a genre which has done nothing but been massively fertile with the Dracula mythos ever since. So, we goes to see Dracula. And I remembered, and I said to Mrs. Kilt-Man, my mum didn't used to like me having the book in the house. She never wanted to see the book. I don't know why my mum was so afraid of the book. I don't think she'd ever even read it. I think it was just, I'm sure she used the term, it's blasphemous, it's sacrilege and all that. My family, some of them were quite religious in some respects, and yet they're also very liberal as well, so I got away with murder. But then again, most religious people get away with murder all the time, don't they? And worse. So, but I was telling Mrs. Kilt-Man about it, and we had a taxi going down to, I'm not sure what the cinema was now. Was it the Showcase Cinema? I really can't remember now. And we were going down one of the big, massive main roads which take you in and out of Liverpool. And we went past the church, and there was a looming statue of Jesus, not against the wall, not even on a cross, but he was leaning out as you were driving past, and he leaned out. I turned around in the cab and I went, and there there was Christ almost imploring me, don't do this, don't go and see Dracula. But maybe only say to the taxi driver, hurry up, come on, let's get there. And in another health and safety sort of debacle, which also happened with me and Mrs. Kilt-Man when we saw Jurassic Park in the same sort of time period as well, they'd overfilled the cinema. It was massively touted, Bram Stoker's Dracula, at the time. It was all over Fangoria and Starburst and every publication going. And it was massively traded on TV. And there were interviews with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves and Anthony Hopkins, who plays Van Helsing, of course, on TV, even on British TV. So it was massively bigged up at the time. So it was enormously popular. So when we got there, and there was queues around the block, well, they let everybody in. So there were people, every seat was taken, but they obviously sold more tickets, and people were sitting on the steps in the aisles, going up between all the rows of seats. People sitting there, and no usherettes were coming in or staff coming in, saying, "You can't sit there, that's health and safety and you're going to move." They allowed it to happen. The same thing happened with Jurassic Park as well, in a different cinema, but that was a pokey little shithole in Crosby, so that was understandable. They had to make some kind of money because they got closed down eventually. But we were there, we watched it, and Mrs. Kilt-Man, it's not her sort of thing at all. Dracula, fantasy, vampires, horror, and yet she married me, a true life horror, and but she enjoyed the spectacle of it and the bravura style of Kilar's score, because it was really emphatic and it thrust you back in your seat if you were lucky to be sitting in a seat and not on the steps in between the aisles. And but I loved it. I was smitten by its sensual, sumptuous qualities, its visual aesthetic, and its sheer directorial verve and creativity and pure throwback experimentation. Loved it all. And Gary Oldman's performance. He wasn't quite the scary, monstrous Dracula that I had hoped for. He was a brooding, romantic beast of a different sort. But I loved the performance. And anyway, so when it got to the climax of the movie with the race against the sunset, where you've got Dracula's put the moves on Mina. She's already a bit smitten with him. Well, a bit more than a bit smitten. He's had some of his blood as well. But our vampire hunters have amassed against Dracula, destroyed all his caskets of earth and all that. They've killed poor Lucy West and Ra, and they're trying to look. We've got to get Mina away from him, and but Dracula's going to go back to Castle Dracula in Transylvania with his amassed cortege of gypsies, and but our vampire hunters have tried to outwit him, and he's passed them in the night, so they're behind him now. But at Castle Dracula, you've already got Professor Van Helsing, Anthony Hopkins, in one of the loopiest of his loopy roles, and he's done a lot of those. And Winona Ryder as Mina, who tries to put the moves on Van Helsing, almost exposing a breast and forcing him, and he's like, "Oh no," and because he puts the crucifix on it, it burns onto her head and all that. But in the meantime, the brides, one of whom is Monica Bellucci, have attacked them as well in the night, and he's done a circle of fire. But the bloody bitches, the bitch brides, have devoured their horse. Oh God, and it's in shocking sort of shadow play. And this is a film that is not afraid to use miniatures, marionettes, and back projection. Very, very old school, and it works. It's very theatrical. So, and then in a wonderful scene, which is slightly cut down, the film has. I'd love to see a full uncut version of this, because there are other scenes which didn't make the final theatrical cut, which is such a shame. But armed with a kukri. What's a kukri? hang on. The cookery is something I put down before and now don't know where to put it. Well, that's a bit odd, isn't it? What have I done with that? Oh, here it is, here it is, here it is. A cookery is the Gurkha curved blade. I've done videos on these things. I've told you how they use them. But Van Helsing goes into Castle Dracula when dawn has arisen and he's cut the heads off the bitch brides and he throws them into the Arges River right the way down the chasm beneath the edifice, the towering Gothic superstructure that is Castle Dracula. But then they realise that, hang on, the sun's going down again. It's a very quick day, and think Evil Dead 2 when the sun rises, then sun sets very, very quickly on poor Ash, and he's stuck at the cabin again for another night of blood curdling, dead-eyes hell, and and they see there's Dracula's carriage coming with the ranks of the gypsies bringing him back, because he's going to get his full powers back when he gets to Castle Dracula. And then right behind him, they see suddenly there is the vampire hunters. You've got Richard E. Grant, Dr. Seward. Charge, he says, he's got a sabre. You've got Quincy P. Morris, the Texan superstar, played by Billy Campbell, who's armed with, let me show you this. It's not quite this one, but he's armed with a whopping big Bowie knife. But his is a very ornate, rhino-hilted weapon, which is that sort of size, bloody big, bloody good, and he uses it. And you've got Harker, Keanu Reeves, and you've got Lord Arthur Holmwood, played by Kerry Elwes. A lot of people always say when I get discussing Dracula, which I talk, I keep saying about when I'm in the pub and we start talking about movies, but sometimes it strays into literature as well. And I've heard people say to me, but in the book, isn't he Lord Arthur Godalming? And I'm like, good morning to you as well. Yeah, because Lord Arthur Holmwood becomes Lord Godalming afterwards, but it's referred to in the memoirs and journals and diaries that that's who he will become. And but he's there as well. And they've got Winchester repeating rifles. They've got the Bowie knife. Harker's got a cookery knife as well. So he's got what Van Helsing has got. Cheers, y'all. Sorry, this is whiskey because I never drink wine. And this sequence is so fucking exciting that when it was on the first screening that I saw, at every subsequent screening, I'm really like, wow, this is amazing. And they do it with undercranking of the camera. They filmed it on a set, I think it was Studio 16 or 15 or something, Culver City Studios. You had Sony Studios, you had Universal Studios and Culver City. And I think they used some Sony Studios. The whole film is studio set, it's all studio bound, but they built massive sets. And this particular set for the Borgo Pass and the sort of ravine which curls around this horrible chasm, the River Arges is down below, there's Castle Dracula over there, and Mina and Van Helsing are there watching. They've got a telescope and they're watching, it's our friends, they're racing against the sunset, he says, and they're curling round this sort of precipitous pass, and they've got to go across another ravine into the gates and the domain of Castle Dracula. Of course, you've got those the blue lights, the bloody wolves chasing me through some blue inferno. Obviously recalls Jonathan Harker, but because Mina's under the spell of Dracula still, she's conjuring, these demonic blue circles which fly up into the sky and create storms. There's a blizzard. It's absolutely snowbound, and if you look closely, you can see that the whole thing's been quarried. Dracula, in the many decades and centuries beforehand, has been mining all of this this entire valley, this chasm, and also I've never noticed it, but if you look, apparently you can see that the river is full of sewage as well. I did not know that, but I've never clocked it in the movie, but that's apparently what the case is. So Dracula, it's a visual symbolic of the way he's tainted the entire area. You know, he's, in this particular version, like he's renounced God because he lost Elizabeta, you know, to a lying Turkish bastard, you know, who gave her false information about his death on the battlefield. So she flings herself off on the highest battlement of Castle Dracula, and he comes back, finds out, and renounces God, and in so doing, somehow or other, becomes a vampire. It's not quite how it's meant to work, but it's all very religio symbolico, you know. I'm sure that was a word I shouldn't have used, symbolico. But so he's I'm going to use that word again though. I like it. I've created it and now I like it. So it's significant that he's tainted not only the people's lives of all the valleys and the villages and the townships and hamlets, you know, because they all cross themselves. Oh, the Dracula, Dracul, the vampire, Nosferatu, the dead travel fast, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But he's geographically and ecologically tainted that world and environment as well. So, but they built this set, and they built it on an oval track. Think a bit like a rollerball when they filmed that on a genuine oval track. And so you've got the vampire hunters, and you've got the gypsies and Dracula in his coffin, which is tied down the back of this carriage, and they're hurtling down this studio-built set, which is massive. And you've got, I think, 16 stuntmen and 35 horses we used. Hang on, did I get that right? 35 horses and 16 stuntmen, yeah, by stuntmaster Billy Burton. And what they did, because it's an oval thing, and they've got trees at this bit, then trees at that other bit, then you've got a rocky chasm here, then you've got like a sort of frozen ice lagoon in this bit where the ferocious winds will knock Jonathan Harker off his horse, and Quincy will come in to rescue him, and while they're still pursuing. So of course what they did, they were filming, like, just keep riding around this bit, and then we'll rearrange the trees so it looks like we're going through different areas all the time, and it works, but it still looks very theatrical. There's no way on earth that you look at that scene and think, God, that's a real pass, that's a real ravine in real Transylvania. No, it's very clearly a studio set with all different types of snow being blown into them, snow being dropped from the top, snow being blown from across. But it looks fantastic. It's theatrical, but it's tremendously exciting. And it will culminate, of course, they've got them shooting the gypsies with their Winchesters, Dr. Seward, charge, and all this. But they've got to get there before the sun actually sets. And they get into the castle gates, the gates get brought down, Mina manages to run in, Van Helsing gets in there, a big fight ensues, gypsies are getting run through. But you've seen Dracula inside his casket, who's awakening, and he's commanding Mina to do stuff, like, you know, he's just waiting for the sun to go down before he can finally, you know, surface. And then finally he does, and Quincy has been stabbed in the back by a gypsy, but he still fights on. He manages to fight this guy off, but he's been mortally wounded, and there's all blood on the snow and all that. Like, Harker gets on top and starts to hack through. Harker starts hacking through the ropes on the casket. The casket bursts open. Dracula's there. Harker just goes with, where have I put that? Keeps hiding like that, and so Dracula's throat's gone, and he just double push. Harker goes flying back, mortally wounded. Quincy, who's the best, a Texan, you know. He rides me like a stallion, says Lucy Westenra, and he's wearing a long cowboy duster jacket with a Stetson on, like, and he badly really gets up with his knife, runs up, skewers Dracula through the heart. Dracula just fucking backhands him. Boosh! He goes flying back. and he's gasping for life now, which he hasn't got much of it left. And of course, Mina then steps through with a Winchester. Would you do the same to me? Would you do the same to me? And Harker's there, you know, because they're engaged to be married. Have they been married? They've been married at this stage, haven't they? They ran off and had a secret little, I don't know, Russian Orthodox wedding took place, if I remember rightly. So they're already man and wife. Someone will correct me on that, but I'm sure they do that in the movie as well. And it's like a little throwaway montage sequence. And Keanu Reeves' John has gone white after his experiences with the brides, biting on bits that shouldn't really be bitten, you know. Well, not bitten anyway. But and she manages to drag the Count, who's clearly dying as well, back into Castle Dracula in the chapel. Mina and all this, and she knows what has to be done, and she'll lean down on the Bowie and skewer him like, and then you get all the angelic transformation, and he becomes the original Count and all that, like, and, well, you know how it ends. But what I'm coming to, folks, I'm playing Kilar's score, and Kilar's score is incredibly rich, powerful, slow build-ups, passionate climaxes, very, very operatic, full of dynamics and verve and vitality, but overall very dark, but with these lovely romantic passages as well, which become quite spellbinding and quite intoxicating, like the Green Fairy, Absinthe, like, here we go, very romantic, very lush, very sweeping, beautiful. But the thing about this video, I'm 27 minutes into it, it's that sequence I've just described. Kilar's music for the Race Against the Sunset is just, it's the most powerful, energetic piece of breathless movie music writing, composition, performance and conducting that I think I've ever heard. Apart from The Lone Ranger, the 1812 Overture, you know, apart from that, this is to die for. And I've tried to do this video a few times, as I said before, and what's happened is I've been playing the scoring, the piece of music in question, and it's monumentally pissed off the people in this, the other people that reside in Kilt Mansion. This, my own gothic edifice, you know, high above the, on a chasm poised above the banks of the River Mersey, you know, to which many of my previous loves have plunged. As usual. Because it is sort of Marmite in it. You're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I love it because it's so galvanizing and it's so relentless, and there's no deviation from it either. It's a lot of energetic action music can have a lovely sort of melody to it at the same time as a headlong roller coaster rush. It can have a melody that you can hum, and it's not like bracing. It's embracing. But this is so fucking forceful and so unstoppable, and it's unflinching and doesn't change its style at all. It only gets more and more intense. That if you don't love it, you really do loathe it, as I've found. So we're going to play it. I know you're probably all enjoying this. If I'd stop prattling on for a moment, you'd probably enjoy the music a damn sight more. But let's get on to it. Now, I've got two versions I'm going to play here. I've got the original film version, and which is unbelievably good and exciting. And I've got a live version as well. Now, the live version, I've heard several, and this is the one I love most of all, but I do not know who's conducting it, what orchestra is playing it, or when it was actually recorded. So I got no information on that other one. But let's play the Race Against the Sunset, the film version. Now be prepared. That starts like that. The strings, bass drums, big bass drums. Bum, 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 bum. This isn't going to stop, folks. This is only going to build and build and build. But I love it. I love that relentless quality in the film. They speed up certain shots and they do frame jumping as well and crash zooms. So it's all like very broken, fractured. It's disorientating and unsettling. And with this bombarding it, it's like, whoa! Or in Dr. Seward's case, charge! It's like that. Some of them got long leather coats on, like Quincy's with his duster jacket on. I think Arthur Holmer's got a fair mantle on, and Dr. Seward's got like a quilt jacket. It's great. What is it? Ishio Isoka did the costumes and production design. So all the elaborate hair pieces and hairdos and costumes for Prince Vlad of, what's it called? Prince Vlad of Sekis, as he announces himself to Mina when he's wearing his top hat and his shades, which Mr. Kentucky Fudge is sporting here. But listen to this. You'd be knackered. That poor orchestra. Not only would your ears be bleeding, you'd be like, there's cello in there as well, you know. I think there's bass cello. But it's the drum. I can't think of another piece of movie music which comes close to the energy and propulsion of this. And even that, you've got that, you chase the horse, you know, Winchester going, shotgun twirl, army style, kukris, bowies, gypsies. And even that's jangling and like, oh no. People in the flicks were just going like, what? They're excited, but they're also like, because the sound design and the mix on this movie was, wow, uber powerful. So the sun's going down, and like Harker's getting up there trying to hack it open. Dracula, suddenly, and then the Bowie, oh. Poor drummers fucking like that. Jesus Christ. Now that was the film version. So what I'm going to do now, we haven't finished yet. I'm going to play it again, but I'm going to play the live version now, which I think is even more dynamic because you can basically hear the orchestra like gasping for breath, and you've got the big cymbal clashes. So it's wonderful. Let's play this. Now again, I do not know which orchestra this is. I do not know who's conducting it. I think for the original recording of Bram Stoker's Dracula by Wojciech Kilar, he did not conduct them. It was one of the Coppolas, the Coppola clan, that dynasty, that conducted it. I've got the original vinyl behind me somewhere there. If I just go like that, yeah, I'm sure that'll tell me, but I don't want to mess my display up, even though you can't even see that bit. But Here we go. Like you bit of silence, and then you'll get all the audience on. And straight away, how'd you do that? So you've had the pause, conductor say like, right, everyone ready? Up, let's go! Straight away. There's a disco beat there, a rave beat. It's even more propulsive. There's other percussion in there as well. You can hear that other little secondary, you know. Your heart's like that. I mean, imagine being in the orchestra playing that. That's one thing. But imagine being in the audience listening to that performance. It's all propulsion, it's all momentum, it's all forward at speed. But the strings denote, you know, the sun going down, and evil is there, and the imperative nature of the mission. You've got to get in before it gets out and gets us. Be knackered. And Dracula's like that. He's waking up. Come on, come on. Willing the sun to just dip below the Carpathian mountains. I'll have you, vampire hunters. And you, Van Helsing. It's even more shrill. They haven't stopped. That's not a film version. That's the orchestra doing it live. How many heart attacks must there have been? Well, we've lost a few more of the string section. We just have loads of, you know, violin players, you know, and cellists in reserve. And poor drummers. You'd need like Japanese taiko drummers, wouldn't you? They'd just do it all day long. And of course, Vlad is from the Order of the Dragon, you know, Vlad Dracula. And taiko drummers are serenading dragons. Listen to that. So it's kind of askew. More clashing. Is that an organ playing there? They should hammer the organ. Ah, this jarring organ noise. It just screams. God almighty. They're all going, thank God for that. Everyone's got their fingers in their ears. They've all got tinnitus. They've all got burst eardrums. But all the orchestra wearing earphones, you know, got cans on their head. Because how the hell can you achieve that and keep it together? You've got to... It's called Race Against the Sunset. Does the conductor then have to like, look, I want you all to race against each other. You, on the strings, are going to try to outdo them on the drums and just compete. Right, off we go. And like, Bam, 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 bam. Wah. God, I'm knackered. Folks, if you can think of a more energetic piece of movie music, please comment below and let me know, because that for me, that's it. That's the one. I've discussed movie tracks and movie scores for years now. You guys know that, and I've played a lot of my favorite stuff, a lot of great music. But that, I think, despite all the other action cues and action movie scores which we know and love, including Jerry Goldsmith and the whole Rambo bunch of movies, and so many other action classics, of course, but nothing reaches those strenuous heights, the giddy speed. And that's it. I mean, obviously here's the beginning, Dracula's the beginning, which is full of brooding menace, darkness. So, in a film which is operatic, flamboyant, sensual, passionate, the score had to be all of those things. And because music is heightened again, it's got to accentuate visuals, accentuate emotion, but it can be played divorced from the movie itself. So it has to have its own personality, its own vigour, its own power. And Kilar, Jesus Christ, did he achieve it or what? So even this, it's clangorous, it's ominous, it's so powerful and full of absolute dark depravity and this sense of dread. It's wonderful stuff, isn't it? Wonderful. But the point of the video was Race Against the Sunset, because we've all become God's madmen. So go and watch Bram Stoker's Dracula, courtesy of Francis Ford Coppola and James V. Hart, because it's a towering movie of arch performances, some a bit naff, but visually sublime, and as an audio visual sensory experience, it's faultless. How can you go from that power to that? All that bone breaking, bass level. There's this ethereal wailing. It's beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it beautiful? You want to watch it now, don't you? Yeah, you do. So do I. So I think I might go and do it now. Folks, I have been Wojciech Kilar. Please, in the meantime, in this ever sepulchral, undead in-between time, please keep it Celtic, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all later. Oh, let me see it, Quincy. Let me see it. Oh, Miss Lucy. That's a big one you got there, Quincy P. Morris. Ah dear.